Imagine a world where Russia forks Linux, breaking away from a shared open-source software foundation. Why would a country take such a step? And more importantly, what could this mean for the future of Linux and open-source development as a whole? Today we're going to dive deep into the reasons behind Russia's possible hard fork of Linux and what it could mean for developers, cybersecurity, and users around the globe. So, buckle up as we unravel one of the most pivotal moments in Linux history. Let's start with a question. Why would Russia want to create its own version of Linux? The answer lies in control and security. In recent years, Russia has moved toward self-sufficiency in tech, seeking to reduce its reliance on foreign software. With growing concerns over potential vulnerabilities and sanctions, Russia may feel it can't depend on an OS kernel maintained by a global community. Imagine if one day global sanctions led to software access restrictions. Your entire infrastructure could be at risk. This fear is real, and it's what drives the urgency behind Russia's potential Linux fork. But the question is, would a forked Russian Linux be a good idea, or could it create more problems than it solves? Before you start imagining Russians hacking together their own Frankenstein OS, let's clear up what a hard fork actually means. At its core, a hard fork in software is a version split. The original software here, Linux, remains as is, but developers create a new branch that no longer follows the same rules, code, or updates as the original. Think of it like branching out from the same family tree but choosing to follow a completely different set of beliefs. Russia would essentially have its own distinct Linux that may or may not be compatible with the Linux we know. This could mean different security protocols, system calls, and a unique set of challenges. But let's pause. If this fork happens, will it benefit Russia, or could it lead to fragmentation within the global Linux ecosystem? It's a question many developers are already worried about. So what happens to open-source collaboration if Linux becomes divided? Linux thrives on contributions from a global community. Right now, code is pooled from developers worldwide, something that makes Linux robust and adaptive. But if major players like Russia splinter off, this collaboration model could weaken. Less code sharing could lead to vulnerabilities. And let's be honest, no one wants an OS with a gaping security hole. Security concerns, the double-edged sword of independence. Now, if only security threats had a giant beware sign over them, right? Russia claims that a unique Linux fork could strengthen national security with the code closely guarded and tailored to local standards. But here's the kicker, a split also reduces the ability to benefit from the larger Linux community's security updates and improvements. Without timely patches, Russia's forked OS could quickly become a playground for cyber threats. Imagine running an OS that no one outside your country uses or understands, like putting all your data in a vault with a key that might not fit if something goes wrong. The impact on developers and system administrators. But how does this impact you, the developer or sysadmin? If Russia proceeds with a hard fork, developers who work on global projects could face new challenges. Imagine being a developer tasked with maintaining compatibility with two versions of Linux, one Russian, one global. This division could drive up development costs, complexity, and risks, as you'd now have to account for different updates, patches, and security vulnerabilities. This is where developers might start feeling stretched thin, wondering which version of Linux will have better longevity, and what happens if more countries decide to follow suit. The economic ramifications of a hard fork. Then there's the economic angle. Think of the companies and software that rely on a unified Linux foundation to run smoothly. If Russia, and potentially others, create their own versions, software developers might find themselves with higher costs and licensing issues. Here's a question to ponder. Could this be the start of a domino effect where different countries create their own versions of Linux? If so, open-source software as we know it could become fragmented, leading to higher costs for developers and users alike. However, not all splits end badly. Could there be a silver lining? Interestingly, a forked Linux could lead to innovation. Russia's unique version may tackle issues in ways the global version doesn't, potentially even creating solutions we haven't seen before. It's possible that innovations from this fork could eventually benefit the global Linux community. if they're ever shared back. Imagine the excitement if Russia's version of Linux, for example, mastered quantum encryption before anyone else. But let's not forget, it could just as easily stifle innovation as fewer minds would work on a shared platform. Could this lead to a cascade of nationalized Linux versions? And here's where things get even more complicated. If Russia forks Linux, who's next? If Russia's experiment succeeds, other countries might look to replicate it. This could lead to multiple national Linux forks, each with its own quirks, updates, and challenges. A world with a dozen Linux variants could become chaotic for developers, system admins, and security analysts, leading to questions around compatibility, security, and even trust. Implications for the future of open source software. Ever tried opening a file that it just won't open no matter what you do? Imagine that across entire operating systems. Splitting off could turn Linux into a closed-loop system, where code improvements and insights are not freely shared. The open source philosophy, free as in freedom, could be at risk. It's not just a question of fragmentation, it's about the very future of open source collaboration. Closing thoughts, the crossroads ahead for Linux. We're standing at a crossroads. Will Russia's potential fork of Linux inspire innovation or set the stage for isolation? One thing is certain, this decision could shape the next era of operating systems and redefine what we consider open source software. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of Russia's potential Linux fork. If you're interested in more discussions on open source software, cybersecurity, or Linux development, click here to watch our latest video on the rise of AI and cybersecurity. And as always, thank you for watching ByteGuardian. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to stay updated on all things tech.